Hi, my name is Devin Lightman, and today we're going to take a look into the history of the Boston Celtics, one of the most influential franchises on and off the court, and a huge reason for why the NBA is what it is today. The NBA was founded in 1946 by Boston Garden Arena owner Walter Brown, who thought he could make a few extra bucks on the off days of the Boston Bruins hockey team by starting his own basketball league, and the Celtics would be one of the first 11 franchises in what would become the NBA. The beginning years were a struggle for the Celtics, as they wouldn't have a winning season in their first 5 years, and it wouldn't be until 1950 when they hire coach Red Auerbach and Bob Cousy and draft point guard Bob Cousy, where they would have a winning season. The two of them put together were something that the Celtics had not seen before. Great basketball mind and the head coach of Red Auerbach, and the generational skills of point guard Bob Cousy. They would finish 39-30, but would fall short in the semifinals of the playoffs that year. That same summer, the Celtics would be one of the first three teams in the NBA to break the color barrier, 3 years after Jackie Robinson took the field for the Brooklyn Dodgers. This was not taken well with the fans at the time, being it was 1950, and Boston has a notoriously historic rap for being a racist city, but this would not take away from the franchise trying to do the right thing. And in 1956, they would draft Sam Jones and Bill Russell. And a few years later, they would draft Casey Jones and forward Satch Sanders, and then finally trade for forward Willie Nollis. And in the '63 season, they would be the first American franchise to have an all-black starting lineup in their sport. With the addition of Sam Jones and Bill Russell to Bob Cousy, this was the start of the Boston Celtics dynasty. They would draft forward John Havlicek a few years later, and then the four of them would win 10 of the next 12 NBA championships, really cementing their legacy in basketball history. Unfortunately for the Celtics, in 1969, Bill Russell would retire, having to find new direction for the franchise. And that direction was in rookie center Dave Cowens. Him, along with John Havlicek, would lead the Celtics to the 1974 and 76 NBA championship, the first in the post-Bill Russell era for the Celtics. It was great for the franchise, but the league itself was struggling with viewership in the 1970s and was looking for ways to regain that viewership across the board, otherwise the sport was going to die out. And in 1976, the NBA and the ABA, another basketball association, would merge together, expanding the league and hopefully drawing all of their fans to one better product. A few years later, while still struggling, the NBA found its two heroes, though they might not have known it at the time. Lakers would draft point guard Magic Johnson, and Celtics would draft forward Larry Bird, rekindling the Lakers-Celtics rivalry and rekindling a love of basketball for Americans across the country. In 1980, the Celtics would also acquire Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale in a trade. In addition to Bird, they were in a new era that would be known as the Big Three era. Their Big Three would go on to dominate the 1981 season and win the '81 championship. And it seemed like it was good things to come for the '80s Celtics. In '84, they would add to the group four-time All-Star point guard Dennis Johnson, and would beat the Lakers in the first Birds Celtics versus Magic's Lakers NBA championship rivalry. 2 years later, the Celtics wouldn't take their foot off the gas, adding Hall of Fame center Bill Walton in what might be the greatest semblance of talent on any NBA court, having 5 Hall of Famers at the same time. After '86, the '86 title, the Celtics would unknowingly fall into some dark times, as their first-round draft pick in the '86 draft, Len Bias, would fall to a fatal brain aneurysm, and a few years later, forward Reggie Lewis would fall to a fatal heart attack while collapsing on the court during the game. The two losses from the Celtics, in addition to Larry Bird's body breaking down in the late 1990s, was a bad mix for the Celtics, and would not have a winning season for 10 years after Bird retired in 1992. There was little hope for the Celtics, and not a lot of light for the franchise following these tragedies and the retiring of Bird. The one bright spot that the Celtics had in the near future was in 1998 when they took forward Paul Pierce from the University of Kansas with their 10th overall pick. And it might have taken a few years, but the Celtics would have their first winning season post Larry Bird in 2002 season on the back of Paul Pierce. This success would be short-lived, though, as they would go on to be losing seasons for the next 4 years, all the way up until the 2006-2000 season. Doing so on his way, Paul Pierce was standing out amongst the rest of his teammates, becoming a 4-time All-Star and earning the nickname The Truth from Shaquille O'Neal as he went on to become one of the NBA's top talents during his era. In the 2007 summer, Pierce would go to Celtics front office and ask them to either get him some help or request a trade elsewhere where he had a better chance of winning the NBA championship. The Celtics did not want to lose their lone star and listened to him clearly and added 2 future Hall of Famers in Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. The additions to Paul Pierce were shown their effectiveness immediately. In the 2008 season, they would finish this franchise second best record of 66-16 and would be the number 1 seed in the 2008 playoffs. The new look Celtics would go on to face Kobe Bryant's Lakers in the 2008 championship and win their franchise record 17th NBA championship after beating them in 5 games. In 2010, the Lakers and Celtics and Kobe and Pierce would have a rematch, though the Lakers would eventually get the best of the Celtics this time, winning in 7 games. In 2013, the Celtics front office had to make a tough decision whether to stick with their aging superstars or move on and rebuild the franchise. And they chose the rebuilding route, where they would trade Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to the Brooklyn Nets for an assortment of lesser talent and future draft picks. Those future draft picks, the assortment of talent did not seem to pay off in the short run, and they were all relying on the draft picks to pan out in the long run, which didn't happen until 2016, but they have happened in a big way since. In 2016, they would draft forward Jaylen Brown, and the following year draft Jason Tatum. They're 2 budding superstars who have made their first and second All-Star games, respectively, in the 2021 season. And here we are today, where the Celtics are building around Tatum and Brown, and although have had a troublesome 2021 due to health and safety protocols and injuries to the team, the Celtics sit at 7th place in the Eastern Conference with a 27-25 record. And while they've been to the semifinals 3 of the last 4 years, they still have not gotten over the hump, something that they aim to do by turning around their season this year and hopefully winning their 18th NBA championship.